Okay, great. So, welcome to the February Hoperation Fund meeting. Today, I'll just skim over a quick introduction of the Hoperation Fund and then introduce our guest speaker for today. She will give her invited talk. After that, I will go through the portfolio report and market analysis and then announce the important announcement. Finally, we will go on to the open discussion and the finance and investment lecture for today. However, we might not have enough time for the finance lecture, so if we run over time, then I'll just move that to next meeting then. Okay, so the Hoperation Fund is a nonprofit organization with a mission to equip students with essential financial knowledge and donate its investment profits to nonprofit organizations and charities. We have four sections: fundraising, investing, donating, and education. So
I usually
now let's move on to the invited talk for today. It is my very great honor to welcome Carrie Su. Carrie is a senior at UCLA, majoring in business economics and minoring in social data science. In the past, she's worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and LEK Consulting. After college, she'll be heading to Bain and Company, one of the world's most competitive financial consulting companies in the world, as an associate consultant. She will be talking about her experience in consulting as well as internships in college today. So again, it is my pleasure to welcome Carrie Su. Thank you so much, Carrie, for coming to present at today's meeting. We are all so excited to hear from you. So can everyone first please unmute themselves and give a round of applause to Carrie? Okay, you can take the stage now, Carrie. I will stop sharing and you can screen share.
Awesome. Thanks, Olivia, and thanks for having me here. Let me share my screen really quickly, and I'm excited to talk to you all more about what consulting is. Can you guys see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is just a brief overview of what's in this presentation. We'll talk a little bit about my experiences like Olivia had mentioned, and then we'll dive into talking a little bit more about what consulting is, as well as how to prepare for internship and job recruitment. And at the end, I'm definitely happy to answer any questions you all may have, whether it's about college or about working or about consulting in general. So a little bit more about me. Like Olivia said, I am a senior right now at UCLA with a business economics major, and right now I'm about to enter an associate consultant role at Bain and Company after I graduate in June. And previously, I worked at NASA as well as at LEK, and I can definitely talk more about that later. But diving into what consulting is, consulting, to put it simply, is kind of like being a doctor for businesses. So a lot of times these companies will come to a consulting firm, and they want the consultants to help them get to their ideal state, like we see on the left side of this slide. And there's a lot of different ways that consultants can do that. Sometimes they help out with creating strategies for growth or making sure that the company can run smoothly. Other times they help out with incorporating new technology into the company. This could be implementing a new server for their communications or switching the company from an outdated technology to one that is more modern. And then you can see some other ones listed here on the slide. Um, Two more to note are compliance and risk. So this is making sure that a company is able to just continue operating normally without fear of going bankrupt or being at risk for being sued by another individual. And then healthcare is also a cool type of consulting too, being able to work with hospitals or pharmaceutical companies. So these are the companies that create your prescription medicines or your vaccines. A little bit more about a day in the life of a consultant. This is kind of mapped out what that expectation looks like. You can see on the left that a lot of these consulting projects can be split into these four main areas. The first one is market research. So sometimes um, a company, let's say Apple, wants to, I don't know, make a car. And they have to try to understand what that market is like for cars where perhaps they don't have a lot of understanding right now. Market sizing is kind of related to. In this segment of the project, a team tries to understand how much a market or specific industry is worth. Interviewing experts is also another part of projects, as sometimes a consulting team needs to understand a specific industry and might talk to a professional, a PhD, or a doctor in that field to better understand it. And finally, is a lot of survey work. So, a lot of times for projects, we try to understand what people think about a specific product. You could see what people think about coffee or what people think about running shoes. And with that information, consultants are able to analyze it and come up with strategies for growth. In the second column, we see some technical skills that are useful to have if you want to pursue a career in consulting. Some of them include Excel, PowerPoint, and Tableau. When Tableau, if you guys don't know, is a data visualization software that allows you to take really big volumes of data and output it into really pretty bar graphs or charts that are presentable to a client. The last two columns of this slide talk a little bit more about expectations and travel. So, for consulting, the work hours are a little bit longer than your average 9 to 5, as a lot of times these consultants work around the clock helping a client with pressing issues. And the base salary is a little bit higher compared to other roles straight out of college, at around $90,000 per year. For travel, I think this is one of the huge perks of being in a consulting career. It really is dependent on the firm. A lot of times, consulting companies will send their teams out to the client site directly to that company they're helping to understand what the office is like and help them from a hands-on perspective. If it is a traveling firm, usually these people are with the client from Monday all the way to Thursday. So you get to explore a new city, you get to live in a nice hotel, and then you get to fly back home on Friday and spend that weekend at home. And then here are some sample questions or cases, as consultants call them, that these teams work on. So sometimes people will come to a company like Bain and Company and ask, how should we enter a new market? Or we're currently making shoes, but our costs are super high. How can we reduce that? And another example that's really interesting is, should we acquire a new company? Sometimes these really big corporations like Microsoft or even car companies will consider purchasing a new smaller company and adding them under their umbrella. And they need help with not only deciding whether or not they should make that decision, but also how they can implement that new company into their existing business models. But honestly, a lot of these case questions are really diverse. And as a consultant, you get to not only work with a lot of cool people, but understand a lot of new industries and problems too. And then next is talking a little bit about internships and jobs. I know a lot of you all are on the younger side or haven't reached college yet, but this is just some input or insight from how I recruited and some tips for preparing right now. So first is networking. I think this is a term that you hear a lot if you are considering pursuing a career in business. And what networking is just reaching out to professionals in careers you're interested in to learn more about their jobs, the work that they're doing, and the company that they're a part of. It's also a really unique opportunity to learn more about the inner workings of a company. A lot of times when you research online, you maybe hear about the company's mission or the external facing perspective of what a company is like. But when you talk to someone who's actually working there, you get to understand what that day in the life is like and really see if you can see yourself working there. In terms of getting a job or even looking for internships, it's also really helpful, as a lot of times the people you talk to might refer you. Um, which allows you to almost immediately get an interview in those roles. Another reason why it could be helpful for recruiting is also just for collecting information that you can use in your interviews. Sometimes when you're talking with your interviewer, you can bring up something you've learned, and that not only shows that you've done your research in reaching out to someone to learn about the company, but it also provides a point of connection with that person. And regardless of whether or not you go to that company, whoever you network with is a strong connection that you can continue to check in with in the future. And then this is resume. I don't know if you all have created your resumes yet, but if not, I think this is some helpful insight on what that process looks like or even what a resume is. So a resume is kind of a PDF that highlights all of your education, your professional experiences, and your extracurricular activities. On this, you can write about your classes, you can write about your awards, your skills, and other honors. So on the left, this is an example resume for a random person called Joe Bruin, who is UCLA's mascot. And you can see how it's organized here with their education on top, experience, and extracurricular activities. I think right now in high school, as you guys are slowly working on your resume or you guys don't have a need to submit it yet, it's helpful to look at the second half of this text box. What can you guys do now? You guys don't have to build the most perfect resume ever right now, but I think it would be helpful to record your activities and accomplishments right now as you're doing them and as you're in this moment. So record and track how long you've been a part of each club, each sport, each school activity, and also write down what you've accomplished in each. Have you been able to recruit 20 new members? Have you learned a lot about social media marketing? And something that is really helpful later on down the line in college as you guys are creating your resume is to track those numbers and highlight the skills and things that you've learned in the process of each activity. So an example of a not so good line to include in your resume could be held meetings for my club members. But another way to put it is met weekly with 10 club members to develop strong financial skills, or to be more specific with what you're doing. And these tips and tricks can really be helpful down the line as you guys are building your resume. And then the last two parts of this slideshow, before we open it up for questions, are more regarding interviews. So a lot of times in any interview, people will ask behavioral questions. And these are situational questions involving leadership, teamwork, problem solving, or more. Some tips are on here that I think are helpful to think of stories and experiences ahead of time. Prepare answers for tell me about a time you worked in a team, or tell me about a time you led a team. Tell me about a time you failed, and have those stories ready for when they're asked in an interview. Another helpful trick is the STAR method. And STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results. A lot of times, as we're talking about experiences that we've been a part of, it can be really easy to ramble, to get lost, to forget what we had said already. And the STAR method really makes it easy for your interviewer to follow along. First, telling them about the situation in which you maybe led a team. Next, telling them about the task you had to do, the things that you did to lead a team. And then finally, that result. In leading a team, we were able to win the state debate tournament. And being able to highlight all of this is super helpful for your interviewer in understanding you and for yourself as you're talking to be confident in it. And the last tip for behavioral questions is just to practice, practice, practice. I think a lot of times during interviews, it can be easy to feel nervous, especially when you really, really, really want a job or really want an internship. And in preparing your behavioral questions ahead of time, it really allows you to be more relaxed as you're interviewing and display the best side of your character and your experiences. And finally, this last slide highlights consulting interviews. Um, Consulting interviews are a little bit different than if you were to apply to a general business role, as they work with you through the case interview. And in the case interview, you are solving a hypothetical business problem on the spot. So this is like one of those case questions that we had asked earlier. For example, Apple wants to release a new self-driving car. Should they do that? And with this, you work with your interviewer in having this conversation and solving this problem. This is really an opportunity for these consulting firms to not only test for business knowledge, but to see your problem-solving skills, creativity, and more. A lot of times you'll see different case types, including profitability. So, how can we make sure we're making enough money in this situation, new market, competition, and mergers and acquisitions. And this is really an opportunity for you to have a conversation with your interviewer to share your thoughts in an organized and thoughtful way, and for your interviewer to look at you and decide if they would want to work with you in a team in the future. A lot of times with prepping for the case interview, it involves practice beforehand, and there's a lot of online resources for that that you guys can definitely check out if interested. Okay, and now that transitions us into this time of Q&A. I know I did speed through that presentation, so feel free to unmute or let me know if you guys have any questions. Awesome. I see one in the chat that I'll read really quick before I get to Chloe. But William said, did you take any classes or extracurriculars before going to UCLA that specialized in your interested major of consulting, business, and economics? I actually didn't take any classes in high school that were really business related. I had taken an intro to business course that my school had offered, but a lot of my interest in consulting actually stemmed from ASB, or student government as we called it here in California. And being able to lead, to plan events, and work with a team was something that really interested me and drew me to business. I do know that there were also a lot of different programs that these colleges hold for people interested in careers in business that are helpful, and definitely would encourage you to check them out. And then I'll jump over to, I think, Emily right now.
Um, did you learn about any or not learn, but did you find any qualities or skills that were particularly really useful to your career?
That's a good question. I think in terms of soft skills first, I would say to be eager to learn and to build yourself up to have that attitude. I think with a lot of business careers, the industry is always changing. New businesses come, new technology is developed. And in preparing yourself to learn and continuously pushing yourself to learn new things, that really helps you succeed in this space. And I think the second thing that I would say is helpful is just being able to put yourself in situations where you can work well with others. I think it's especially important to learn how to work well with teams, and whether that's in clubs, whether that's at school, or even on sports teams as well. And these are definitely skills that you can transfer over to a career in business. I think for all the technical skills, you can learn them as they come, but definitely don't put that pressure on yourself to learn everything all at once.
Thank you.
Um, Thank you. And I'll hop over to Chloe.
Oh, what like stats or extracurriculars helped you like get into UCLA?
Yeah, I think in terms of stats, um I think GPA wise, it was helpful having a um higher GPA on my end. Um Ranging from like let's say 3.9 to 4 unweighted, I think is helpful. And then with AP courses out as well, that boosts your GPA up. So throughout college, I had taken, or throughout high school, sorry, I had taken a solid amount of APs that had really raised my GPA and made it at more of a competitive benchmark compared to other people applying. I think the one statistic that really stood out for me or made me stand out as a applicant was my involvement in student government. I ended up serving as the executive president for the whole government during my senior year, and that was something that I was not only able to like list on my college applications as a position, but also write about in my essays as experiences that I had learned from. Let me know if that answered your question or if you wanted. Anything else more specific, Chloe?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. And then I see in the chat, John had said, what are some examples of what specifically you do as a consultant? That's a good question. I feel like sometimes listing it as a business doctor does seem pretty broad. And I can speak briefly about one of my projects that I worked on this summer. I was working with a breakfast food company, and they were kind of struggling with performing well. They weren't really living up to their projections of how they wanted to be doing financially. So they hired my consulting team to do research on the industry, specifically in understanding product pack sizes. Um, so a silly example is if you think of a bag of chips, there's a lot of different sizes. You have your party size, the really big bag. You have maybe a snack bag that you can buy from the grocery store, and the really tiny bags that you get at Costco. And the consulting team was asked to research all of these different bags, the revenue that we were generating from each sale, as well as the costs that we're going into, and to see, do people really like having so many options, or do they only want two main options? And in interviewing a lot of people in advertising or working at grocery stores, we were really able to understand what consumers preferred, and make that recommendation to our client. I hope that was helpful, John. And feel free to unmute or ask any other questions. But Olivia, definitely let me know when you would like to move forward from Q&A.
Oh, okay, great, Carrie. So I really enjoyed hearing about your work as a consultant, and being a consultant sounds really cool. Like you get to travel around to different companies and analyze and fix their product problems. And I enjoyed hearing about like your project on that cereal company. I also like found your tips on getting into internships and job recruitment advice really useful too. So, so personally, I just have like a few questions. I'm actually I kind of wanted to ask. So, my first question is, what brought you to be interested in business economics and consulting? Like, when did you decide your interests or passion in consulting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, a lot of it was thinking about my interests and things that I wanted to like do or find value in. In terms of interests, I really like working with people in teams, and I also enjoy math and more of that quantitative data analysis sector. So in combining these two, consulting or business felt like the perfect opportunity to do both things that I really enjoyed. Another reason, and I think the main reason why I really like consulting, is that general purpose or mission of wanting to help a company. And I think that was something that I found super fulfilling, being able to look at a company that is struggling or that needs help and put in that time, put in that work to support them in performing better. And I think throughout college, I've really been able to further explore that and solidify my interest in this career through clubs, through internships, and through just talking to people in the industry.
Oh, that's really cool, Carrie, about how you like found your interests and connected them to business economics and consulting.
Yeah.
So my second question is that I heard that Bain and Company's hiring process focuses really heavily on like critical thinking skills and creative analysis. So therefore, its employees have very high critical thinking and creative analysis skills. So, do you have any tips for us if we want to cultivate these skills? Like personally for me, I like need to work on sometimes my critical thinking and analysis. Mm. So do you,
Yeah. Or sorry, keep going. Keep going. Sorry, I cut you off.
oh no, it's okay. That was just my question.
Okay, awesome. I think that is a good question too. And I think these things seem a little harder to practice, right? If someone says, I want to be better at math, you can do a bunch of worksheets. But for critical thinking and analysis, I think the two things that come to mind immediately are one, like educating yourself on what is going on in the business world. This could come from reading articles on the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times and really understanding just what's going on. I think a lot of times as you're reading these pages or these papers too, you hear a lot of vocabulary that might be new and giving yourself the time to understand like what is a synergy, what is an acquisition, and really memorizing those definitions or being familiar with them are things that can be helpful once you're solving a business problem. And then the other thing that I thought of immediately that was helpful for me this summer in practicing was to just practice with things that are around you. A lot of times I would walk around and just ask myself silly questions. If I saw a water bottle next to me, I would think, maybe this water bottle company is failing. Name 5 random ideas for them to improve their revenues. And sometimes the ideas would be as silly as, oh, like partnering with um, Coca-Cola or partnering with the LA Lakers and having these water bottles available at a sports game, or even, oh, making the sizes a little bigger, um, giving people a free cup of coffee if they purchased it, and having this opportunity to continuously practice, to brainstorm time and time again, allows you to really build up this skill of being creative as it comes to solving a business problem and thinking through things in a structured way.
Oh, these sound like really useful advice. Thank you so much. I'll keep that in mind. I'll definitely like try to use these exercises and stuff to build my own critical thinking skills. And my final question is that I heard like with the emergence of generative AI recently, many jobs have been impacted. So, for example, I heard that many college students with computer science degrees cannot find jobs after graduation. So, does generative AI impact consulting as well? And like, what's the job market like for business economics majors right now?
Yeah, sentiment for me, man.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, right? I think generative AI has definitely been transforming the world around us. And in terms of consulting specifically, I think AI will change the way that consultants work. A lot of times with analyzing data or summarizing a big document or maybe checking the wording of a specific slide, consultants can now use this technology to make work more efficient, more effective for them. But I think consultants will still be needed, even as generative AI continues to take over society. And I think the reason for this is a lot of times, as businesses are going through a problem, maybe a business is about to go bankrupt and they really, really need help. The CEO, yes, they could ask ChatGPT or they could search it up on Google, like, what do I do? Tell me how to fix this. But a lot of times, these people who are struggling or in these situations really just want like another human to reassure them, to tell them that it'll be okay, and provide them with solutions to solve their problems while also understanding how they're feeling. So I think in this situation, that person-to-person interaction that all consultants do is essential and cannot be replaced by AI. So I think in this regard, AI will transform the way consultants work, but I don't think that career will be replaced. And in terms of the job market, really quickly, um, I do know that a lot of like the tech jobs have been impacted with just being harder to find because AI is so prevalent. I think in business, it's kind of impacting that job search for a lot of new grads, as a lot of business processes can be automated. However, I think, like I mentioned before, that person-to-person interaction that is so necessary and present in a lot of these jobs is still needed. And in that regard, I think a lot of these roles are still open for new grads. Thanks, Olivia, for the questions.
Oh, no problem. That actually makes a lot of sense, actually. I guess like consulting is one of those jobs that can't like really be replaced by AI, but like they can be helped by it, I guess. Cause I think yeah, that makes sense. I guess like companies really want like a human like creative thinking and analysis to solve
Mhm.
the problem. Okay, thank you, Carrie. That's all of my questions today.
Okay, thank you. And then, really quick, let me answer William's in the chat before I hop over to Emily. For William about IB, which is investment banking, I can speak a little bit to this process. I think in similarity of work, it's perhaps a little bit more quantitative, and deals with a lot more data analysis and different like financial metrics too. What I can speak about or what I am familiar about is just recruitment for investment banking roles. A lot of times, people who pursue investment banking come right into college knowing that they want to and join clubs that really support them through this recruitment process. One thing to say about banking, though, as it comes to internships, is that recruitment usually happens really early. A lot of times, people have their full-time job offer when they're maybe like halfway through college. So I think a lot of it is really preparing yourself for this career if you know that you do want to pursue it and heading into college with that in mind. I hope that helps, and then I'll hop over to Emily for your question.
This might be a silly question, but um did you ever find like you couldn't help a company? And then like what would you say to them?
That's a good question. Not a silly question. I think a lot of times companies have specific ideas of how they want to be helped. Like an example is like, oh, I want to double the amount of revenue I'm bringing in. And I don't think I can speak about this from my own experience because I'm still in college. I haven't started working yet. But I think in situations where this is the case, a lot of times these consulting companies aren't trying to hit a goal, like, oh, let's score a 95 on this test and we'll call it a day. But rather, they're trying to prepare the company that they're helping to be better suited for these situations if they come up again. Maybe on this test, you only scored a 79, but you have that foundation to prepare yourself to continue performing well on every single test after. And I think this is something that is also valuable to these companies that we're helping as they work through their position or just operating in the industry. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully that is helpful.
Okay, then, so does anyone? Oh, okay, I think William has a question. Never mind.
Okay, awesome. Um, what do you know about a company in a dire situation where bankruptcy is inevitable and liquidation potential? How would you be able to help them? Ooh, that's a hard question. Um, being completely honest, I'll just share what I do know. There's a lot of times companies that specialize in these situations. There's a company called A&M or Alvarez and Marsal that is really a special consulting company as it comes to helping out clients like Sears, maybe, I don't know if you've heard, or like Toys R Us, um, like I think it was called Blockbuster, or like a movie rental chain from a long time ago, as they kind of are going out of business. And in these cases, these consulting firms, they're not trying to like revive them or like, oh, let's bring them back. But what does it look like transitioning out of this space? What does it look like dealing with potential lawsuits or all the employees that we're letting go of? And I'm not super familiar with the work that these consulting companies do in these situations, but they really help them just transition out of the space. I hope that's helpful, but definitely can look into it more if you're interested. And then, really quick, Heidi's question: does being a consultant require more years of college? And how did you get into consulting? Um, I think being a consultant doesn't require more years of college. A lot of times people go straight into working at a consulting firm right after they graduate. A lot of times, consulting firms also have roles called experienced hires. So these are firms that recruit master's students, recruit PhDs or MBAs to come back and provide a perspective that is specifically more like advanced or detailed from just their extra years of graduate school. And then in terms of how I got into consulting, I actually heard about it from a friend at UCLA who was talking about careers in business and how consulting was a really unique opportunity to understand a lot of different industries, as well as get to meet a lot of people, develop technical skills, and figure out what you want to do after college. So I think that was what drew me to explore consulting first. And in these past 4 years, I've definitely found that experience really fulfilling. I hope that is helpful, Heidi.
Okay, so does anyone have any more questions for Carrie? Okay then, Carrie, then thank you so much for again coming to the Hoperation Fund for this talk. I really appreciated like the time you spent on this presentation and for like answering a lot of our questions. Also, by the way, what template did you use for like your slides? Because it's like really cute.
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you for having me here today. There's a website called slidesgo.com, and they have a lot of free templates for slides that are creative, really professional, or pretty.
Oh, okay then, thank you. So anyways, again, thank you so much for coming here. We really learned a lot from your lecture today. And can everyone please unmute themselves and give Carrie a round of applause?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
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 Okay then, so now let's go on to our investment portfolio review for today. Okay, so the return in January of our Hoperation Fund investment portfolio was 1.79%. The total capital in the investment portfolio is now around $23,200. Unfortunately, we did underperform SPY QQQ this month, but that was mainly due to because we had a large position in Nvidia, which did not do very well in January. But recently, I readjusted the position sizes and sold part of Nvidia's shares. I also, with the remaining money, purchased AVGO and ANET. These two companies both benefit from AI infrastructure growth. So recently, with the appearance of DeepSeek, it has shown the world that that people can use cheaper computer chips and still achieve really good results. So this may mean that more companies, especially smaller companies and startups, are willing to use AI in like their business. So AVGO is a company that produces both chips that can potentially replace NVIDIA's chips or compete or are competitive with NVIDIA's chips, and equipment to connect multiple chips together. So my reasoning for buying AVGO is that if NVIDIA chips are less popular or there is less demand for NVIDIA's chips, then likely many people will go and buy AVGO's chips. However, if the demand for NVIDIA's chips increases with the increase of AI in many companies, then the demand for AVGO's equipment to connect multiple chips will also increase. So no matter what, AVGO's revenue will increase. Additionally, ANET is also another company that makes equipment for AI hardware. So ANET will also benefit from an increased demand for AI. Another new acquisition for the Hoperation Fund is BLDR. So I purchased BLDR to capitalize on opportunities from the rebuilding efforts following California wildfires. So unfortunately, as we all know, recently California has had a lot of fires. So these fires have destroyed like many homes and buildings. So therefore, therefore, construction companies will be in very high demand in these few years. BLDR is a company that produces construction materials, so I believe that it will have a lot of demand for its construction materials. Additionally, Trump's new economic policies were also a factor in my purchase of BLDR, as President Trump's policies will also benefit the infrastructure industry, so therefore benefiting BLDR. So here's a graph of BLDR. I bought BLDR in this yellow section highlighted here in the circle. Above are the fundamentals and metrics of BLDR when I purchased it. So you can see the PE equals 15, PS equals 1.1, EV over free cash flow equals 13, ROE 27%, etc. So generally the fundamentals are pretty good, or at least acceptable for BLDR. One thing to note about BLDR is that typically it doesn't have much revenue growth. However, I believe that with the recent California wildfires and Trump's new economic policies, as I mentioned before, BLDR will experience at least a temporary revenue growth. BLDR is also a cyclical company. So this means that depending on the season and demand, BLDR's price will fluctuate from high to low and high to low. So this is why BLDR will not be a long-term investment. I am only investing in BLDR for short-term investing to benefit off of these recent events. So now that we've reviewed the recent acquisitions and recent changes in the Hoperation Fund portfolio, here's a comparison of the monthly returns of the Hoperation Fund portfolio, SPY, and QQQ. From June 2023 to December 2023, the Hoperation Fund has had a return of 23.52%. During that period of time, in contrast, SPY and QQQ had returns of 15% and 18%. In 2024, the Hoperation Fund had a return of 41.3%. In contrast, SPY and QQQ only had returns of around 25%. So after taking these returns in factor with the returns so far in 2025, the total return for the Hoperation Fund is 77.6%. So now let's move on to talk about the market analysis. The market direction based on a signature long-term investment model of the Hoperation Fund is bullish for midterm and long-term. The short-term market sentiment, according to the CNN Fear and Greed Index, is 46, which means that people are mainly neutral. The market is mainly neutral, but slightly leaning toward fearful. For suggested position sizes, of course, everybody has their own optimal position size depending on their goals. But personally, I would recommend 60 to 80% in stocks, 10 to 30% in cash or treasury bonds, and 5 to 10% in gold. However, note that while the midterm and long-term market direction is bullish, the market is still very overvalued. As I said before in previous meetings, if you take the reciprocal of the 10-year Treasury yield, you will get a good estimate of the reasonable PE for the S&P 500. So the reciprocal of 4.54% is about 22. Therefore, a reasonable PE for the S&P 500 would be around 22. Right now, though, the S&P 500 has a PE of 30.18. So this means that in the near future, the S&P 500 will likely experience a pretty big drawdown of around 20 to 30% or more. So I would exercise some caution right now. We all know though that the S&P 500 has 11 sectors though, but I won't list them right here. So, however, the worst sector or the one that's the most overvalued is the S&P 500 information technology sector. For technology companies, since they're growth company or they're like growth stocks, generally the price to sales or PS ratio is a better metric for evaluating technology stocks. So here you can see is a graph of the PS ratio of the S&P 500 technology sector throughout the years. You can see that in the dot-com bubble of 2000, the highest PS ratio was 7.9. And in the bear market of 2022, the highest PS ratio was 7.8. Right now, the PS ratio is 9.9. That's almost 10. That is way higher than the highest PS ratios of both bear markets or both crashes. What this means is that we are very likely to experience a large drawdown or a market crash. Again, I would estimate around 20 to 30%, although that isn't like entirely certain. Oh yeah, I think Heidi asked what is a drawdown? A drawdown is basically like a a loss from like the highest point of a stock to its like lowest point. Um yeah. Oh, no problem, Heidi. Um so again, as I was saying before, you should, while the midterm and long-term market direction is bullish, you should still be a little cautious. So you may be asking, where do we get the market direction for the Hoperation Fund market analysis? The market directions in our market analysis portion is based off of a signature investment model in the Hoperation Fund, which determines the long-term market direction. So in this graph below, you can see the blue line is our long-term model, and the orange line is the graph of SPY. You can see our long-term model avoids many of the major crashes that SPY had. For example, over here, and over here. So the model basically evaluates the market direction, and using that adjusts its positions and to avoid a lot of crashes. This is evident in the data too. For example, our long-term model's worst year is negative 19.87%. In contrast, SPY's worst year is negative 36.81%. The max drawdown of our long-term model was also negative 21.6%. In contrast, SPY will have a max drawdown of negative 50.8%. So you can see our long-term model avoids a lot of the major crashes or drawdowns that you would otherwise have experienced if you had just buyed and held SPY. So I think Leo said, how do you think the tariffs will affect the stocks? If you mean the tariffs that Trump imposed upon like Canadian, Mexican, and Chinese imports or exports, I feel like that's really hard to tell. I do feel like the tariffs will make like um con the consumer like products markets and industries very unstable, as it would definitely affect like businesses and their products. And since around 40% of America's products are imported from Canada, Mexico, and China, I feel like that will definitely uh impact many like companies' revenues and profits. But like it's pretty, I feel like that is pretty hard to tell or to like predict. So right now, uh, I feel that I'm still uncertain about how those tariffs will affect stocks. Oh yeah, you're welcome, Leo. So now let's move on to. Hold on. So now, after we're done with the market analysis, let's move on to talk about where are we on our economy and market cycles. So again, in my opinion, we are still around the mid-expansion of economy stage and the mid-bull market stage. However, I feel like we're still nearing the market top, so I would recommend, again, looking out for like recent news and stuff and being slightly more cautious. So now that we know about like where we are on the economy and market cycles stages, what sectors will perform best based on like these stages? Well, below is a chart of the best sectors in the past month in January. You can see the healthcare sector of SPY XLV has performed the best, then the financial sector, communications services sector, and then materials, etc. You can also see patterns between like the sector performance and the estimated S&P 500 earnings growth in 2025. So below you can see this graph is this chart is by FactSet, which is a pretty reliable like source for predictions. So you can see that information technology is predicted to have the greatest earnings growth, then healthcare, then industrials, and then materials, etc. So so it would be wise to if you were looking for like sectors to invest in like these top sectors here. Another thing that has had like profits is gold. Gold has achieved an all-time high. You can see from this graph here. By the way, in the past months, the Hoperation Fund has also been like recommending buying or increasing position sizes in gold. And you can see here, like the gold has really had like high profits. Mm. So one reason for gold's like well not profits for gold's like increase in price like and it's like greater demand uh, is that people may be wanting to hedge against inflation. Another reason is that because the market is kind of unstable now, people maybe wanting to find more stable investments. Yeah, forget what I just said about the profits. That was like a slip of tongue. And now finally, let's move on to talk about seasonality patterns. So the seasonality pattern I want to touch on today quickly is the January Barometer Effect. So according to the January Barometer Effect, if the stock market, typically measured by the S&P 500 index or SPY, ends January higher than it started, it is believed that the market will generally rise for the rest of the year. Conversely, however, if January sees a decline, it might indicate a bearish market for the year ahead. Using historical data since 1930, the index has returned a median of 16% by December in years when the first month, or January, was positive. On the other hand, the market had a median of -2% in years when January was negative. However, you should take this with a grain of salt though, because like past performance does not guarantee future results, and this seasonality pattern is not like extremely strong. So you should like again take this with a grain of salt and not entirely 100% believe this. So in the graph on the right, you can see the S&P 500's monthly in like each month, its monthly or median performance grouped by January's impact. So you can see two lines. The green line shows if January was a positive month. It shows the median returns for each month. If January had if the stock market in January had increased in price. So 84% of years ended in the green when January was a positive month. Meanwhile, if January was a negative month, the index returned a median of -2%. Note, however, only 56% of years actually ended in the red or had a loss. So this, of course, is not exactly the strongest seasonality pattern. Of course, for this year in 2025, January had a positive return, or like the stock market had a positive return in January. But of course, since the market right now is very overvalued, that does not mean that January will have that January will mean that the the market will have an increase. Actually, it would be like pretty reasonable to expect that in the near future, maybe like around maybe in 1 year or so, the market will experience a bear market or like big crash. So again, you shouldn't like take this you shouldn't 100% believe in this seasonality pattern. However, this is an interesting seasonality pattern, and of course, it does generally prove itself or work. So this is just a bit of like useful information for your interest. And now I see we're nearing time, so I would like to finish off with a very important announcement. So right now, I'm calling for volunteers to do financial news reporting. We're looking for volunteers to deliver latest financial news at our upcoming meetings. Each volunteer will only have to prepare around 1 or 2 minutes to share the latest financial insights. News topics can include, but are not limited to, company news, for example, updates about well-known companies, including product releases and significant corporate events, economic news, insights into economic trends and data releases that impact the broader market, stock market highlights, such as key movements and trends from the stock market, CEO talks, such as summaries and highlights from recent speeches or interviews with top executives and CEOs of companies, and earnings reports, brief overviews or summaries of companies' earning reports and financial performance recently. So this is an amazing opportunity to participate in the Hoperation Fund and have experience in just quickly hosting maybe a quick lecture or discussion. This this would this may also impact your selection process for VPs too. In the summer this year, we will begin our selection process and application process for becoming vice presidents in the Hoperation Fund. So your experience in becoming a volunteer in these Hoperation Fund monthly meetings might say might be an important part in your selection process as a VP if you want to apply. Of course, I don't decide who will be VPs or not. A group of 5 advisors will vote on the final decision, but your experience in being a volunteer here would definitely take a big part in the advisor's final decision as to who is what VP. Another great opportunity for participating in the Hoperation Fund is to become a book reading club leader. So we're looking for enthusiastic volunteers to lead our reading clubs, such as a business reading club or a technology reading club. So advisors will suggest the book list. What you'll do is you can have a chance at organizing book reading activities. For example, you can schedule and host engaging reading meetings. You may also have a chance at leading fundraising efforts. Following our successful model, you can organize people to advertise to non-members. These non-members will pay a fee to join the reading club, which would add on to our fundraising efforts. And you could create inspiring discussion questions. You could collaborate with other volunteers to design questions that spark meaningful conversations and a deeper engagement with the books while learning more about the books yourself. So these two opportunities are both great chances to experience leading and hosting an um, event or a mini lecture. And again, these will probably play an important your experience as a volunteer here, either in the reading club or in the monthly meetings to report financial news, will play an important part in whether or not you may be selected to become a VP later on in the summer. So again, I would greatly encourage everyone here to volunteer or at least consider this amazing opportunity. And so yeah, that's it for today then, since we are running a little bit over time, but that's okay. Does anyone have any questions for me about uh, okay, I think William asked a question I've been hearing a lot. Okay, anyways, oh, okay, then this will be the end of this month's monthly meeting. Thank you all for coming again, and we had like a lot of like fun listening to our guest speaker today, right? So thank you all for coming. And I think William asked a question. I've been hearing a lot about this new ETF portfolio called YMAX, offering dividends of 60%. Okay, I actually have not heard a lot about YMAX, but if you want to ask about my opinion, I can research that ETF portfolio later and tell you about it, okay? Um, but that sounds like a really interesting ETF portfolio. Anyways, okay, so so then that's it for today then. Thank you guys and see you.
Thank you too.
Hmm?
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.